In the year 536 AD, the world didn't end, but for many people living through it, it probably felt like it had. The sun dimmed, temperatures dropped, crops failed, and entire civilizations began to unravel. There were no nuclear weapons, no world wars, no global pandemics yet recorded on that scale. And still, historians today often call 536 AD the worst year to be alive in human history. What makes it even stranger is that for centuries, people didn't fully understand what actually caused it. It started quietly. Across Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, observers began recording something deeply unsettling. The sun lost its brightness. Ancient writers described it shining like the moon, weak and pale, casting almost no shadows at midday. One Byzantine historian wrote that the sun gave forth its light without brightness, as if the sky itself had become sick. Imagine waking up every morning expecting daylight, only to see a gray, cold haze that never fully cleared. People didn't know whether it was divine punishment, magic, or the beginning of the end. Temperatures dropped rapidly across the northern hemisphere. Modern scientific studies suggest average temperatures fell by as much as 2 degrees Celsius, which may not sound dramatic today, but in agricultural societies, it was catastrophic. Crops failed across multiple regions at the same time. Grain harvests collapsed. Food shortages spread fast. And when food disappears, stability goes with it. Famine followed. Historical records from Ireland to China describe hunger, mass death, and social breakdown. Communities that had survived wars and political chaos suddenly faced an enemy. They couldn't fight nature itself. People migrated in desperation. Trade slowed. Economies shrank. Entire regions slipped into survival mode almost overnight. For ordinary families, every day became a gamble between starvation and disease. And then things got worse. Just a few years later, in 541 AD, the Justinian plague erupted, one of the deadliest pandemics in ancient history. It spread through the Byzantine Empire and beyond, killing millions. Some historians believe the weakened populations, already suffering from years of famine and cold weather, were especially vulnerable. In other words, the disaster of 536 may have set the stage for one of humanity's first global pandemics. For centuries, historians argued about what caused the darkness. Some blamed volcanic eruptions. Others suggested comet impacts or supernatural explanations recorded in ancient myths. The mystery lingered because no one had physical proof. Ancient writers described the symptoms, but they didn't understand the mechanism. Then modern science stepped in. Ice core. Samples taken from Greenland and Antarctica revealed microscopic volcanic ash layers dating precisely to the mid-530s. These samples showed evidence of massive volcanic eruptions, possibly multiple eruptions occurring close together. One leading theory points to a gigantic eruption in Iceland, which blasted enormous amounts of ash and sulfur into the atmosphere. That debris spread around the globe, blocking sunlight and triggering what scientists now call a volcanic winter. Think about that for a second. A single natural event, or series of eruptions, may have darkened skies across continents for over a year. No warning, no way to prepare. Ancient societies had no understanding of climate science. To them, the world simply stopped working. The consequences rippled through history. The Eastern Roman Empire struggled to maintain control of its territories. Political instability increased across Europe. Some historians linked the climate disaster to migrations and conflicts that reshaped early medieval societies. Even the decline of certain civilizations in Central Asia may connect back to these environmental shocks. It wasn't just a bad year, it was a turning point that quietly redirected human history. What makes 536 especially unsettling is how global it appears to have been. Tree ring data from different continents show stunted growth during this period, confirming years of extreme environmental stress. Independent cultures with no contact with each other recorded similar experiences: strange skies, failed harvests, and relentless cold. When separate civilizations describe the same nightmare at the same time, historians pay attention. The untold part of this story is how fragile civilization really is. We often think of history as shaped by kings, wars, and inventions, But sometimes the biggest forces are invisible particles in the atmosphere, shifting temperatures, natural systems humans barely understand. Entire empires can struggle not because of enemies, but because the sun itself seems to fade. And here's the eerie part. People living in 536 AD had no idea when, or if, conditions would improve. There was no forecast, no scientific explanation, no reassurance, just gray skies day after day. For many, it must have felt permanent, a slow, silent apocalypse without explosions or invading armies. Eventually, the skies cleared. Temperatures slowly recovered. Humanity adapted, as it always does, but the damage lingered for decades. Economies weakened, populations shrank, and political landscapes shifted in ways historians are still tracing today. The year 536 doesn't get the same attention as famous wars or empires, yet its impact may have been just as powerful. It reminds us that history isn't only shaped by human decisions. Sometimes the planet itself takes control. And for one dark stretch of time, in the 6th century, humanity learned a terrifying lesson: the world doesn't have to end for everything to fall apart.